one of the most common bits of time management advice that is out there is to say no more often, right? Like, no is a complete sentence. No is how you free up time. And I totally get it. We do often need to say no to things that aren't worthwhile or that aren't our biggest calling so that we can say yes to other things. But there's a big but here. It's yeses that open doors. And it's often yeses to things that are a little odd or a little outside your comfort zone.
Welcome back to the Time Freedom Podcast, where you can learn how to rethink your work and your money to create a life you love right now. Join us for insights to help you find meaningful freedom so you can choose how and when and with whom you work for as long as you want. Here are your hosts, me, Brian Harriet, and Kirby Dennison. Today on the podcast, we welcome Laura Vanderkam. Laura is a best-selling author, speaker, podcaster, and time management expert. She's written multiple books on how people can spend their time better, including 168 Hours, Tranquility by Tuesday, and her newest book, which is called Big Time, A Simple Path to Time Abundance, and it's out May 5th, 2026. Her TED Talk, How to Gain Control of Your Free Time, has been viewed over 16 million times. Laura is a Princeton grad. She lives outside Philadelphia with her husband and 5 children, and she's been tracking her own time down to the half hour for more than a decade. Welcome back to the Time Freedom Podcast. We're very excited today to welcome Laura Vanderkam to the episode. Welcome, Laura.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm also very excited. I think I've followed your work for many, many, many years. I don't think quite a decade, but definitely probably 5-6 years if I think back. You're one of the kind of foremost thinkers in the world on time. And I just find this fascinating that you've tracked your time to the half hour. Is that right? For like a decade?
Yep. 11 years.
That's
awesome.
Pretty crazy. Oh, and also you've got a very famous TED Talk too, like 16 million, I think is what I saw.
Something like that. Yeah. It keeps going up, which is nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. So we'll put the links to all that stuff in the notes, but you have a new book coming out called Big Time. And so we definitely want to talk a lot about that. And then if we touch on some time freedom topics, that's great too. But I'm so glad to have you because I think about time. You think about time way more than me, I think even. And so I think we could have a fun conversation.
It's a great topic.
Yeah. And so before we kind of get into the nitty gritty, we ask a kind of a random question to get the juices flowing. And that is, what do few people know about you? And whatever kind of comes to mind, feel free to share. Kirby and I will also do the same. Sometimes we just play off of what you say, and sometimes we just have to come up with our own thing. So just keep it fair.
Well, I mean, I have been tracking my time for 11 years now, and people know that. It is not the sort of log that you could easily make into a pie chart, though.
Yeah.
So often people like, oh, you must be really into all the Excel file, like cool things that you can do with it. And it's generating the data and all this stuff. I'm like, actually, it's almost like half narrative at this point, like, listing it out. And I actually have to go in and tally stuff manually when I am wanting to add up my time because I am not consistent with how I describe things. I will skip cells. It's not a perfect sort of thing, but it's enough comprehensive that at least I can see, where my time is roughly going and make use of it. So if anyone else was looking at it, they would sadly not be able to, create a pie chart with categories that are mutually exclusive and comprehensively exhaustive, but it's okay.
It sounds like a time journal to some degree.
It really is. Now, I've seen I've seen thousands of time logs over the years, and people are so varied in this. Like, some have really cut everything into like 6 categories. Like, all of their time will fit in 6 categories. And then other people are truly writing a novel. Like, it is a novel in time log form. And I'm like getting to know their kids, their partner did something really irritating. And then the next 30 minutes is like devoted to this. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. Now what's going to happen in the, cell at 6 p.m.? I can't wait to find out. So it's a mix.
I love it. Actually, I'll go next because I just thought of something when you were describing that. And that's usually how this works. But few people know about me that my grandfather, who I think he lived till he was 93, he passed away about 6 years ago. He kept what he called a diary. But it was like the diary of like a man who grew up, was in World War II, like just facts. Like, he wrote facts. So like his diary entry would be date, temperature. It was cloudy today. Brian came to visit, had peanut butter and jelly for lunch. And then it was just
for years, decades of that like chronological representation of what he had to eat. It was like something else.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. I mean, some journals are about the emotions and some are just
Yeah.
about what happened.
Yeah, just about what happened. All right, Kirby, what do you have for us?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, Brian. I could actually ditto that. My grandpa still does that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny, he's a farmer, so you go in, he has like a calendar book, and every day he just writes down what the temperature was, if it rained, whatever he did,
Yeah.
baled 50 hay, bales of hay today, whatever. So I also made a lot of appearances in there because I helped on the farm for 3 years. So
Well, that's cool. Yeah, but now you have those things. Like for me, I have that. I actually have one of his to remember him by, which is really pretty cool. Well, great. So what we like to do also at the top of the episode is to kind of help our listeners place kind of who and where you are and all of those sorts of things. If you could just give us some basic personal and professional demographics, that usually helps a lot.
Yeah, well, I live outside Philadelphia with my family, which is my husband, 5 children, although one is now off at college. So there's only 4 here now full time. A dog, So we have a pretty standard suburban life, getting everyone to every place that they need to go to, running the family schedule, that sort of thing.
Very nice. Excellent. And then, of course, as we heard in the intro, you've written, 6 books now on time? 5?
I think, Big Time is my 7th book on time management. And
Nice.
I have a few others on topics that, people don't care about as much. So
I think I read, though, that your favorite thing to write was some fiction that you wrote.
yeah, I enjoy writing fiction. I have written a few novels. I also wrote a book on personal finance. I wrote a book on entrepreneurship years ago, all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. I want to just go back to the decade of time tracking. The question that I immediately had was, what are some of the unique things if you've ever totaled it up to say, like, I think one comes to mind, like, I think I read somewhere that you've spent 37.5 hours training for a marathon or something like that. Like, or maybe it was 37.1 days. I don't remember what it was. But are there any other like weird or unique things that you can look back on?
One thing that's fascinating to me is how stable the amount of sleep I get has been. So I started tracking in April of 2015, which is when I had a 3-month-old baby. So 3-month-old babies are not known for, orderly and long sleeping, stretches and things like that. So obviously it was, disrupted sleep and stuff, but still totaling it up over the year, I averaged 7.4 hours of sleep per day. So, the next year still had a toddler, sleep can still be interrupted. I was adding it up and it was 7.4 hours a day. And the next year it was 7.4 hours a day and so on. It is still 7.3, 7.4, somewhere in there, averaged over any longer stretch of time. And I guess that's just what my body is aiming for. So now I know that about myself. I mean, I used to have the sort of like, oh, I should be getting 8 hours of sleep. And I'm like, well, actually, 7.5 is perfectly fine. And if I get 7 on one night, I'm not that far off 7.3, 7.4. So a little bit more on another will get me there. And so it was just interesting to find that out.
Yeah. Is it related, do you think, to one of your things I think I've read, which is that you should always try to go to bed at the same time?
A bedtime is a smart idea. And that's because people I think a lot of people actually do have a pretty strong sleep set point. Not if you are a chronic insomniac, but if you are kind of a normal person, you have a strong sleep set point. And over a longer period of time, your body will get you to that. The issue for many people is that it looks like, I don't know, if you've ever been on that ride in Hollywood Studios and Disney, the Tower of Terror, where it goes up and down, it yanks you up and down like this.
Yes.
That's how people are sleeping, right? So there's like 6 hours on Monday night, and then they crash on the couch on Tuesday night, and they're skimping on Thursday night, and then Saturday they have to sleep till noon to make it up. It's all over the map, and you're not actually saving time by skimping on sleep certain nights because you're going to make it up elsewhere.
Later.
You make it up later. So it is so much better to get the amount of sleep you need every single night as opposed to less than you need some nights and more than you need other nights. And since most adults have to wake up at pretty set times for work or family responsibilities, the variable you could move is when you go to bed. Set that, the amount of sleep you need before when you need to wake up. So, I'm generally waking up either 6:20 or 6:40, which means I am going to bed at, 10:50 to 11:10 the night before. And that tends to work for me.
How do you do on sleep, Kirby?
I am a sleeper. Like,
Oh, you
I
are?
go to bed
Okay.
early and I do wake up early. However, I have to have like 9 hours of sleep. I don't function well. Like my brain isn't there. Also have small children. And so it was hard at the beginning. And we've adjusted. Now my husband does it.
I'm super strict about my sleep too. Sometimes it annoys my wife even, because also she's much later than me. So we then each have your alone time, because she's having it at night and I'm having it in the morning. But let's talk about your new book, if you don't mind. Who is this book written for?
I'd like to think it's for anyone who would like to have a better relationship with time. I know that my core readers are always people in what I call the busy years. So
Mhm.
people who have kids at home, people who are kind of still in the career building stage of their life. And so they are trying to make all the pieces of life fit together. And so, yes, those people will definitely find themselves in this book. But even if your life looks a little different, I mean, we all have 168 hours in a week. We all have 8,760 hours in a year. And I think many people feel like there is not enough time for the things that they want to do. But I want to challenge that story and help people start telling themselves a different story of time abundance and there being enough time for whatever matters to you.
So that's definitely what I got out of watching your TED Talk was that it's not about not having enough time, but perhaps prioritizing the wrong things. If you prioritize appropriately, you can have time for that. And then does this book then take it like one further step? And not only do you need to prioritize, but you can make decisions about how you do your time such that you have too much time. Is that what you mean by time abundance?
I don't know if people ever think that they have too much time. Although I would argue that actually in many cases, people do feel like they have too much time for whatever it is they're doing. This is why people are counting minutes in boring meetings or when they're in their
Yeah.
commute or, on a long plane flight or even sometimes kind of waiting for bed, waiting for it to be the time to go to bed at night or something like that. There are long stretches of many people's lives where they are wishing time away. And I don't like that. I wish people didn't wish time away, but those are things we need to work with. Yeah, I mean, this is in some ways a practical book. There are lots of time management strategies in there, but it's also in other ways a mindset and a philosophy book about how you can approach time differently and view time as your friend. I mean, you and time working together can achieve things that would be hard to do not over the long haul. And so, we often think that time is scarce, but I've found when people track their time, they tend to end that experiment with a very different mindset, that they start to see that there is space. And then it becomes a question of, how can I move things around or get creative to make my life look more like what I want it to.
And I like the anecdote that you shared in the book about the woman who had the hot water heater that broke in the basement.
Yeah, in my TED Talk, yes.
Was that the TED Talk? See, I'm mixing. I watched them both recently, and I mixed it up. So, can you tell us or just explain that to the listeners? Because I think it's a really interesting way to reflect.
No, I've seen so many time logs over the years, and this one sort of stood out to me. This is a very busy woman, and she went out for a Wednesday night for something, came home to find that her water heater had broken, and there was water all over her basement. Like anyone ever had this happen, it's a pretty big mess. And so her time log shows her dealing with it, the immediate aftermath, and like the plumbers had to come in, the professional cleaning crew because all her downstairs basement stuff is ruined with all the water that got everywhere. And so all this is being recorded on her time log and takes about 7 hours of her week. And what's always interesting to me with this is a lot of like time management literature, a lot of, everything's about like, let's find another hour in the day, right? Let's help our readers, our viewers, our listeners find an extra hour in the day. I've seen that headline a million times. And if you think about it, this woman found an extra hour in the day. Like she wasn't planning on spending 7 hours on her water heater in the course of a week, but she did. Like she found an extra hour in the day. But, it's because something had to happen. It was an emergency. And so it rose up the priority list. But I think that we can decide that things that are important to us can be treated with that level of urgency, right? That these are things I really want to get to, and I will put them first, and I will treat them with the urgency of this broken water heater. And when you do that, then you do them, right? And everything else will move to accommodate it.
Emergency concept, I actually talk about too in my talk, which is to entrepreneurs who are trying to organize their business around this seasonal schedule concept where you can like pull yourself away from your business for 1 or 2 or 3 months. And everyone's like, there's no way I could ever do that. And I say, if you've ever had an emergency in your life where you've suddenly had to, a parent died or something happened and you had to get out of work for 2 months, it works out. You figure it out. It happens. So if you think about it that way and just, design your life around being able to escape and then just be thankful that it's not for an emergency, it does come down to what you're prioritizing around. Absolutely. I totally agree. What was the origin story behind this book? Like, I'm kind of curious, especially for someone who's written multiple books, like what happened in your life or what was the trigger for this particular one?
Well, when you're a career writer, it's not usually one moment. It's more like, okay, we're going to do a next one.
Yeah, I see. And you probably got a bunch of them going that you're kind of
I'm working on the next one right now. But this one, you do still need to distinguish them from, because I write for busy people and I don't want to write the same book and I don't want to bore people with, the same advice I've given before. So my promise is always to somebody reading this, like, even if you've read other time management books, even if you've read my books, you're going to come out of this with something that I haven't told you before. And so to do that, I always have to do new research. I have to talk to lots of different people. I have to start looking at time from different angles. And Big Time wound up being a collection of kind of my favorite quirky topics in time and that I've sort of collected over the years. And I was trying to think, is there a thread that ties them all together? And it truly is this thread of time abundance, that when you follow certain habits, use certain strategies, you truly do start to see time as bigger and then time as having space for more things that you might want to do, which includes time to relax. And so every chapter in the book gets at that from a different angle and tells a story of, people who are fascinating and are doing interesting things and illumine time in a different way.
So there are a couple. So yes, that's exactly how I read it as well. And I think there's a whole host of ideas in there. There's a few that struck me that I'd like to ask you about, if that's all right. And the one is just around the serendipity chapter. Was it like 6, I think, or chapter 6, where that is in there? And how, like, I remember reading going, okay, so here's someone who's very structured, but then also kind of believing in this serendipitous thing that might happen. And then when you described, I think it was the saying yes concept. Again, I tend to mix things up in my mind, but it's a practical thing you can do that then could lead to a serendipitous result. Am I getting that right? Or
yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that I think is really helpful with time is to be open to serendipity. And serendipity is wonderful things that you are not actively seeking out, right? And so it's, things that come to you that you aren't expecting. And that is where a lot of our new opportunities come from, where our best memories come from and all that. And, if you knew about them already, you'd be doing them. It's these new things that come into our lives. And this is kind of a challenge with time management because we need our routines. Routines make us more productive. One of the most common bits of time management advice that is out there is to say no more often, right? Yeah. Like, no is a complete sentence. No is, how you free up time. And I totally get it. We do often need to say no to things that aren't worthwhile or that aren't our, biggest calling so that we can say yes to other things. But there's a big but here. Mm-hmm. It's yeses that open doors. And it's often yeses to things that are a little odd or a little outside your comfort zone or somebody you don't know that well or, an idea you haven't really pursued before that lead to these new opportunities. So the idea of a yes project is to challenge yourself to say yes to things that intrigue you for a certain period of time just to see what happens. So, I did a yes quest with many people. About 200 people went on a yes quest with me, where they agreed to say yes to things that sounded interesting, intriguing, fun. If they had the means, they had the time, they had the money, they would just say yes and see how it went. And people had so many cool experiences, just like going on trips, meeting up with people, going to adventures on the weekend. People got like job offers. People went on, all sorts of joined organizations that they never would have before. Somebody who had never sung before join a choir. I mean, it's things like that. Life is just so much more interesting when you try them out. And maybe you won't try them forever, but who knows?
I agree. And I always joke Like, actually, I think it was my wife who told me, like, because Tim Ferriss and all these guys are like, you got to say no, you got to say no. And she's like, well, I don't think you're as busy as he is. So it's
I
probably
don't know.
okay to
You
say
might
yes.
be.
I might be. But what we've been trying to say yes to. So, for example, just yesterday, we had some friends that said, oh, our parents have a cabin in Lake Tahoe and they're going to be gone. Would you like to come up? And my first thought was, absolutely. Let's figure out how we can do it. And so I haven't had the experience yet. We're leaving right after we record this, but I'm hopeful that it'll be really, really super fun.
Yeah, no, those are the kinds of things you should say yes to. Like when you're immediately excited, that's a good yes. Because often we start trying to talk ourselves out of things. Like you're like, oh, I'm so excited, but the logistics are going to be challenging. And I'd have to cancel this thing that I agreed to do, but I'm not excited about. And we'd have to work this out. And we'd have to call in a favor from somebody. It's like, so many logistics. It's like, okay, but it is just logistics. If you are excited, that's probably a sign to do it. The things we want to say no to are the things we're trying to talk ourselves into.
Oh, right. That's a nice little rule of thumb to think about. That's cool. I also think too, if someone's going to go through all the effort to kind of coordinate it and ask it and figure it out and reach out to you, like, oh my God, they're just making it easy for you and kind of setting it up there for you. How can you not say yes? It's much nicer. The other concept I really liked was how, taking these short little 10, 15-minute meetings with people that, maybe you normally think you shouldn't have time to take could potentially lead to something. And it's almost like taking little bets on yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of people in the world and you can't meet with everyone. You have to have some boundaries with this, but you could, even in a busy schedule, carve out a couple hours in a week to have these nice to meet you conversations. And most won't lead to anything, but some might. And by remaining thoughtfully accessible, you make it a possibility that good ideas can still reach you.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Can you tell us what active patience is from chapter 8?
Yeah, so this is the idea that time is our friend. And we do what we can, and time is also working its magic at the same as we're doing this as well. And so lots of things that seem like insurmountable problems or you have no idea how long they're going to take. It's just that as time keeps going, your odds generally are increasing as long as you are doing what you need to do. And then time keeps doing what it needs to do. So, I think about something like somebody going through a job search, for instance. Say, it's so uncertain. How long is it going to take? I have no idea, right, to find something. And there's going to be setbacks. There's going to be challenging moments in it. But you can just sort of have the faith that I'm going to do what I do. Like I'm going to have a certain number of informational meetings. I'm going to, send out my resumes. I'm going to work on it for a couple hours a day. And then meantime, time is doing its job too, right? Like as you keep putting these things out, they will compound on each other. Things will go out there. People will talk about you. Something will happen. And eventually it will work, right? You don't know exactly when, but active patience is doing your part so time can do its part too. I mean, there's a fascinating study I reference in the book of people who had unhappy marriages, who are rating their marriages as unhappy. Now, as you might imagine, some number of these people get divorced. But of the ones who didn't get divorced, 5 years later, the majority of them said their marriages were happy. It is just that they were at a low moment and time kind of pulls you out of the slump, right? And, time can change things that you can't immediately on your own.
And I had an old boss that used to say, sometimes the time just isn't right now, but that doesn't mean it won't ever be. Like, I think I was trying to sell something to her. Oh, it was a prospective client. She's like, man, this is going to be perfect for us, but we just can't do it right now. And lo and behold, I waited a couple of years to just stay in touch with people and then boom, then it happens, and it's almost like it's a version of playing the long game.
Yeah, not yet doesn't mean never.
Which they tell you in sales, you don't want that answer. You don't want not yet. You want yes or no. But yes, but for everything else, yes, I totally believe that. That's really cool. Did you use early readers with the book? Having written so much, I'm curious if you follow some of those same
Well, I mean, my
techniques.
editor obviously was reading it
Yeah,
and my agent and, the people I quote in the book read the parts that they're in. Yeah.
That they're in. If there were like certain parts that you already know that people find particularly interesting in this book, do you know that yet?
I don't know that I know that yet. I mean, I think different people react to different things. I mean, certainly, the idea of tracking my time for 11 years strikes some people as a bit obsessive. So that's a question a lot of people lead with. I've had a lot of interest in sort of the year-long projects, the idea of doing something really big over the course of a year, because when you break big things
Oh, yeah.
into 365 chunks, it turns out that each little chunk doesn't need to be that big. You have the patience to get through it.
And you used the example of War and Peace, reading War and Peace.
Reading War and Peace. Yeah, it turns out War and Peace has 361 very short chapters. So if you read one chapter a day, which will take you less than 10 minutes, you will be through the book in a year. And you won't feel like rushed reading it. Like, you'll actually be able to absorb it and pay attention to the story and get to know all the characters because, 4 pages a day is very doable.
Is War and Peace a good book?
It is an amazing book. It is an amazing book. It's got a good plot. The characters are pretty amazing. It's people know it for being a big book.
Long. Yeah.
But it's actually a good book.
And I wonder if it's good, but it takes so long to see that it's good that people give up on it too soon.
Well, there's definitely moments in the book where lots of people have given up. There are a couple moments, like there's a slow stretch about 200 pages in. There's another slow stretch about 400 pages in. So you make it through the first 200, then you're like, oh, I'm in. But then like you lose interest at around the 400. There's some moments that have gotten lots of people in it.
I think that must have been my wife, because I told her about this and she's like, well, sure, you can read it over the year, but why would you want to? I think she got stuck at the slow part at the beginning and then thought, well, this must not be a good book. See, now I'm going to have her read it. Why don't I read it?
You should.
I was going to say, why aren't you going to read it?
Like, you volunteer other people for
Is
things.
it fiction? Because I don't read a lot of fiction.
It is fiction.
Yeah, that's probably why. She reads like 3 books a week. So I'm like, here, I suppose if she took on War and Peace, then she would lose
She would probably not read all 3 books in a week.
Right? Yeah.
I would say War and Peace is probably better than a lot of the 3 books that one might read in a week.
I'll bet. Do you have a particular favorite part?
So I am kind of obsessed with the circus metaphor for life, because I think circuses are fascinating, but also just that the way people have used that metaphor is just so incorrect.
Can you please share? Because
well, people say my life is a circus. They mean it's out of control. It's chaotic, right? There's all these things all over the place, and who knows what's even going on. An actual circus is nothing like that at all. A circus is so carefully orchestrated. Like, all these stunts are done perfectly well within a fraction of a second, well executed. Complexity is not the same thing as chaos at all. So if your life was actually a circus, that would be amazing. It would be like all these 3 rings, I think about the 3 rings of life, like career, relationship, self. All of them would be having these masterful acts going on in them. The other thing with a circus is a lot of the stunts that are done in a circus require a net. And a net is there to make sure that even if you're attempting amazing things and they go wrong, it's not a disastrous outcome. And that's a good metaphor for a schedule too. We all need a net in our lives. So I love the circus metaphor, but using it more as I want my life to be a circus. I plan my life for it to look like a circus.
Wow, I never thought of that. What do you think of that, Kirby? Is your life a circus?
It's funny that you say that, because we have always said, like, when we started having kids, it's all the randomness. And I was like, I think, gosh, with our first, we were like, we're like the traveling circus. So it's so funny that you say that, because we obviously were not a very good circus.
Not one you'd pay money to watch.
Right.
No.
We're going to move on to the next
Maybe some
now.
bloopers.
What another aspect of the book that I liked was the 1 year view on it. Like, what did you say, 8,760 or 40?
Yeah, 8,760 hours. Yep, that's the number of hours in a year.
Because that's the frame I also take in my book, which is like, let's look at a year in your life, one that would be the perfect year for you. Like, how does that year map out? And that's how I'm able to break free of the work-life balance concept, which I view as like something that you do on a week-to-week basis to, take some time off during the day and then make up for it later. And so I saw a lot of similarities there. Have you thought about the concept of time freedom and like what that means to you?
Well, I'm certainly always trying to make sure that I am the one in charge of my time.
Yeah.
And not feeling beholden to do a lot of things, really. I mean, the idea of agency is certainly the goal, that you are in charge of your 168 hours or your 8,760 hours. They're going to be filled with something. but what they're going to be filled with is largely up to you.
Yeah, I like agency. That's great. Autonomy. Some people say, and optionality. Remember, Kirby, that was one early on. We're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. Given the question I sometimes ask, but it depends on the type of person that we get, is if they do it or not. Which is, are you a 10-year look out 10 years? What am I going to be doing in 10 years? Or are you like many people are with the serendipity thing? Is you have no idea what's going to come up. I'm kind of interested your take on that.
So I generally subscribe to a philosophy of plan tightly and then plan lightly. So the closer things are, the more tightly they should be planned.
Okay.
The next week is fairly tightly planned. The next month, the broad contours are there. And it's certainly anything big that's going to happen in the next month. You want to know the logistics coming up. Anything huge, certainly like a year out. I like to look at my year and think about what I will be doing, like the trips I might be taking or any professional goals I might have for that.
Uh-huh.
So that's sort of the year-long thing. I think past a year, it's really hard to see clearly because the variables start to stack up. And so you don't know what will come up in the year that will then lead to an opportunity that 2 years later you're going to want to take. Now, I might broadly know that in 10 years, I plan to have my same family, only the kids will be 10 years older, right? So there's that. I like to think I will probably still be writing, although who knows what like writing will even look
true.
like in content production in 10 years.
That's a good point. Of all the books that you've written on this topic, is there one idea that people really gravitate toward in particular? Or what do you, it's not like really what you're known for, but it's like, what do people are constantly bringing up to you?
So a phrase I've used a lot is that I don't have time means it's not a priority. And people have said various versions to me over the years of this. And I think it's a good catchphrase to have in your head. Like anytime you start telling yourself, I don't have time to do X, you say, what I'm really saying is it's not a priority to do X.
Mhm.
And that may be true. Like X may be a wonderful thing, but in your life right now, it cannot be a priority for whatever reason. We all go through different phases of life where, wonderful things just are not going to fit at that particular moment. Doesn't mean they won't fit later. It doesn't mean they won't fit at a different point, even of this 8,760 hours. But, right now, maybe it doesn't. But, repeating that language reminds us that time is a choice. And there may be consequences to our various choices, but we are smart people and we do have the power to fill our lives with the things that deserve to be theirs. If you keep that in mind, I think your relationship with time will be different. Also, you'll find yourself being really a bit of a smart aleck when people tell you they don't have time to do things. You're like, well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
You're telling me it's just not a priority. I keep that thought to myself.
Very nice.
I've heard that before, especially around like working out, eating healthy, meal prepping. It's always, well, we're too busy. We don't have time. And the first time I heard that, and it's like, oh, so your health isn't a priority. I was like, oh, you're right. Okay, that's fair. So I love that, just to keep that in your mind. My question is like, how has it changed your time, like raising kids? Because you have 5. So like from start till now, how has that?
Well, it's been a long time at this point. It's hard to even think back. My oldest is going to be 19 in this spring. So yeah, it's been a long journey at this point, although I still have a 6-year-old. So, we have the whole gamut of children's ages. I think it has definitely made me more aware of my time. And partly that's because when you have a kid, all of a sudden somebody's got to be responsible for that kid 24/7. And so you are aware that either you're with the kid or somebody else is with the kid. You need to know who it is. Right. And so you become accountable for your time in a way that you may not have been before. But it also means that you just need to then figure out how the pieces fit together. And I think a lot of people kind of give up, but there is space, even with kids, to have hobbies, have friendships, to spend time with your partner, to sleep. It will all fit in 168 hours.
Yeah, and I forget where I heard the first reference to the fact that, that there's a lot of things you can do later in life, but like have that kid that's in elementary school, you kind of only have it when it happens, and then you don't have that anymore. And so you have to be extra aware of it when it's happening, which is pretty cool. Laura, this has been so wonderful. Thanks so much for coming on. Where can people find you? Can they find the book? All of that.
Well, come visit my website, lauravanderkam.com. I post, new blog posts many days a week. And you can find out about my various podcasts, newsletters, etc. there. And then please check out Big Time, available in anywhere books would be sold. And so I hope people will give it a look.
Yeah. And it comes out May 5th, right?
May 5th. Yes, May 5th on sale.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. What a great conversation with Laura. Did anything stick out to you? What stuck out to you?
Yeah. So it was interesting when she was talking about like the things that she's noticed as she's tracked her time.
Yeah.
I remember, well, first my business coaches had me do that. And that's one of the first things that I do is like have people look at where they're spending their time. And you do find spaces where you're just not using
She is
effective.
one of the original people to do that. And I think that's kind of what she's known for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so impactful. I mean, I still do it just because I'm like what did I do? And also I think for me maybe it's a challenge or like a game. So like how many things can I get done in the day? Then so it's like creates more efficiency. And I really like that she brought up the time versus priorities and then
Mhm.
that you have to be accountable for your time because I think all three of those pieces together, A, you have to be accountable when you're tracking, you're seeing where you're wasting your time and you really see what is priority in those moments, which is exactly why I do a calendar audit because it reflects of what you think you should be responsible for. What are you avoiding the to-do list that's not getting done and how does that all come together? So it was perfect for me.
Yours is the practical side. I'm going to go completely on the opposite side, which is the idea that I loved is the one around serendipity. When I remember coming out of college, I thought you started at this point, you knew you were going to get to this point in your career, and you took a straight line to get there. And I now believe that you just have to take advantage of things that you don't even know are going to happen. It may be curvy and you may go backward for a little bit, but that might then slingshot you forward faster because of these things that you just don't even know about. But I also believe that you can put yourself in a position to experience these. And that's why, having the short meetings with people that you probably wouldn't normally do, you never know what it's going to lead to. And not everything is going to lead to something great, but something might, and you would have missed it if you didn't take it.
Yeah. And I think that you also are creating an impact that you don't even know by taking those minutes. So
Wow.
it's two
Well,
things.
we should leave with that. That's a deep thought. Love it. Thanks everybody for joining us this week. Like and subscribe, give us some honest reviews, do all of that good stuff. And thanks so much for being listeners of our podcast. We appreciate you. Take care.
Have a great week.
Hey, listeners of the podcast, I have a special deal for you. You can now pre-order my book, Time Freedom, if you go to the link timefreedombook.com. And my special is, normally, if you order 3 books, you can get the audiobook free immediately. If you put the promo code podcast, you can order 1 book at your favorite retailer, Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, wherever, and put your order number in the form, put the promo code podcast, and I'll immediately send you the audiobook for free right away. So you don't have to wait. Pre-order the hard copy book, get the audiobook free. Thank you so much for your support. timefreedombook.com.